Dallas Cowboys owner and general manager Jerry Jones. Good morning, sir.
Hey, good morning, man. Good to be on with you.
Now, I always think Dak gives a fascinating perspective, especially when he talks about himself. And Dak Prescott, he described his play thus far this season as, quote, average through 6 games. Do you think that is a fair way to describe Dak's play thus far?
Well, I think Dak is very pragmatic. He's very realistic. And if you think about it, as hard as he works to take it from the classroom, the designs, the steps, and put that on the practice field and then take it to the game, you have to be. You can't gild the lily with your mirror. And I think Dak's one of the best at doing that that I've ever seen. And he's unabashed about evaluating himself. And I think that's a recognition within his inner self that when he does do good, he can relish that. And so how do you argue with that? Because of what Dak, relative to what's in that mind and mental, that's a big part of what's made Dak Dak.
You know, Jerry, in the past, this team has been its best whenever the pass protection's there and Dak is striking for big gains. What do you think this team is best at right now?
Well, I think that I'll be very candid with you. Every aspect needs improvement from where I thought I would be, we would be. I know where the players and the coaches think they would be. And so that's not discouraging to me at all. As a matter of fact, I think it's a conscious thing to bear down. It's a conscious thing to pay attention to real detail, hand placement, how you do your steps. Now, when that pocket collapses, that alters Dak's steps. And one of the things he's done since he's been here, he's evolved from one level of passer to this level of passer, and boy, that's a quantum leap as opposed to when he left Mississippi State. And he's here. He's done what you'd hope all of them would do, and that's improve like that. Footwork is a major part of his work. And so when that protection breaks down, it screws up the footwork. Mm-hmm. And so this stuff is one thing about it. I sometimes think we look over the technical aspect. Even I talk about more of what's inside, the desire to want to, that type thing. Well, really, I think sometimes most of what I'm talking about is your willingness to work on the little things. And the little things, little technique, little steps. And great players that we've had do that.
You know, Jerry, players, they do develop at different speeds throughout their careers. Some are plug-and-play types, and some may take a full year or two to kind of become what they are as a player. What kind of things do you think we should be looking for in some of these younger players' progression this season?
Well, to expand your question and your point, he didn't tell me this, but his close-in people said that Tom Landry said don't ever judge an interior lineman until after they've done it 3 years, been in the league 3 years. Said don't ever judge them. You'll make a mistake letting one out from under you. And so that just gives you an idea of the room to get better. And so you've got to be – now, the problem is while you're patient, then you are also, if you're trying to compete with those players, then you've got a developing player more so than you're competing with. I know that Nate Newton, who I think is one of the greatest offensive linemen that has played this game, he came in as a defensive lineman just as the great Mark Tuinei did. But when we got here, I know that Tex had told me and Nate had eaten his way out of a job. And he came in as a defensive lineman, so did Tuinei. Well, they were the cornerstones, if you will, or two of the main cornerstones of our success, winning 3 Super Bowls. And Nate, of course, evolved into a dynamic player in the line. So it's a fact. players get better. And it's a fact. Players can taper off after they've played many, many years. And so those things, when you hear them, we're playing with a lot of young players, or we're playing with guys that are at the end of their career. And when you hear about injuries, that's real stuff. All of this is very, very real. And all of this is very, very real when we look at routes and say they're not open. I know that you look at the main guy that's supposed to catch the ball. It could easily be the other guys that don't have the ball that didn't run their routes deep enough. I can't tell you in my life how many times I've seen a bad pass, too covered or what have you, because the receiver cut his route 2 feet short. Instead of 9, he knows to run at 9.5. Well, that's the kind of detail we're talking about throughout both sides of the ball in special teams. It's a big difference in cutting that route at 9 or 9.5.
Now, I was glad you brought the tapering off part, too, because you and Steven have both had the discussion with us on air about, running back slowing down typically around 30. Do y'all have any strong rules about other positions that you feel on your team?
Well, that's not a strong rule. I know I've told you the story, but back we were looking at Emmitt Smith, and at his end of his career, we're saying, well, he's running out of bounds when he wouldn't have done that early. He's doing this when he didn't do that early. So Larry Lacewell, our scouting director, put together a tape and said, now, guys, I want everybody to come in here and look at the plays early or late or what have you. Didn't tell us which years we were looking at. Just let us look at them. And if you'd look at a play and say, well, now, see there, he wouldn't have run out of bounds like that. He'd have kept going for yards there. Or he ran out of bounds, and that's not good. Well, bottom line is this. He had mixed it all up, and so the routes that you might have, or not the run that you might have been looking at, were a later run or the run that was earlier. Let me get this out of my mouth. But the bottom line is that I don't know that the naked eye can really say he's lost a step. You say, well, production can say he's lost a step. Well, I'll say this again. Some backs have the benefit of a certain scheme in blocking. Some backs don't. Emmett be the first to tell you he had the benefit of a great blocking, and also the fact that Aikman was so accurate that the linebackers would play back. The defense played back more, giving the offensive line a better chance to have room before first contact.
Talk with Jerry Jones right here on 105.3 The Fan. You mentioned both the running back and the quarterback. For San Francisco, Jordan Mason, their running back, second in the league in carries, second in yards, and their quarterback, Brock Purdy, can also run the ball. How concerning is that going up against y'all's defense that obviously has struggled stopping the run this year?
Well, Brock Purdy, I think he was at Iowa. I think it's Iowa. Could be Iowa State.
Iowa State.
But the point I'm making is he looked Mahomes-ish. If you look at him in college, he did things like Mahomes. He did shuttle stuff, and he did that. And he wore Oklahoma out. I know Barry Switzer called me and told me, said, there's a kid up there at at Iowa State that has something different. And so the bottom line is that he does have the ability to make things happen, create unique ability. Is there a way to shut him down? I guess so. There have been several teams that have been successful against him. As to mentioning the running back, so often we see in the NFL names that haven't been really dwelled upon, whether they be young or whether they be a veteran player that's just had a year when he stayed healthy. But at the running back position, if the line is blocking, if the passing scheme is helping create running lanes, if the field position is good, then running backs can have great days and look good doing it. You let those three things just mentioned break down, and the running back's not going to look good.
Now, I realize this question could be the same for every other team in the league, but when you mentioned Purdy had that some Mahomish look to him, and Barry Switzer was telling you what qualities he had, why not take a flyer on the kid? He didn't go until the very last pick of that draft in 22.
Very last pick in the draft, and chalk that up for one that not for me. You know, I had Jason Garrett's daddy stand up in the back of the draft room, and emotionally, like Billy Graham, almost say, I've been grading players all my life, and Randy Moss is the greatest receiver I've ever seen. Take him. And Randy thought he was going to be taken here and wanted to be taken here. I didn't take him. Okay? And he went over to Minnesota. First time he showed up here, I think he scored 3 50-yard or more touchdowns against us and kind of waved his finger at us as he went by. He really wanted to be with the Dallas Cowboys at the time of the draft. I remember when he came in shorts or kind of cutoffs. And we went down and got him some long pants and a shirt and sports to wear for his 2-day visit. But bottom line is we don't need to get started. We don't have enough time on 5 programs to go over all the misses here.
Did Randy ever forgive you for that? Have y'all made nice since then?
Oh, I'm nice. I've never forgiven myself. Now,
all right.
You know, when a guy that you respect as much as I respected Jason Garrett's daddy and been in this league as long as he has and is epitome of preparation, when he stands up and says it's the greatest one he's ever seen, you ought to listen to that. I didn't.
San Francisco, Jerry, they've been hanging their hat for years now on being fast and hitting hard. Do you expect anything less for this game on Sunday?
Absolutely not. How could we not have the respect that you should have because of the games that we've played against them, our own experience against them. But they've got great coaching. They've got, in my mind, they've got an outstanding organization. And believe you me, they've got some depth. And so, as we said, we can't make that excuse of attrition called injury because every club, they're a poster child of it, has injuries during the season. So I don't even really think about that aspect of it.
You know, somebody brought up the San Francisco. Sometimes teams get spooked by the other team. They feel like they can't get over that hump. How do you mentally get over that kind of a challenge whenever you've taken that kind of effort against them every time?
Listen, I think since I bought the Cowboys, I've had it put on us by the Arizona Cardinals. I've had it put on us by probably every team in this league. And so the idea of what happened last year or what happened the year before, it's a new dial-up every year for just mentality. Now, obviously, sometimes they've got more of the same players that were with it. But I've had any team that has that are capable of beating you. I'll never forget one of the longtime coaches on Coach Landry's staff came up to me, and I was in the dressing room after one of our first or second games. My head was down between my legs, and I was so sick we got beat and looked so bad doing it. And he came up and tapped me on the shoulder and said, Jerry, and this 35 years ago, he said, Jerry, I got a feeling you're going to be doing this a long time. I'm going to tell you so you can lighten up right now. They pay their players too. Mm-hmm. They will kick your butt in the NFL.
So, Jerry, recently you guys have been very good in night games, like your Sunday night football, your Monday night football. Is it just random, or is there any reason you guys have played well above 500 in these night games?
No, I can't think of any reason, and that's the proper assessment of that is random. I'm all for it, and because there's no difference in terms of one gives you an edge.
I know we've talked about this in the past, but you know, ESPN put out the article about the tours with Schultz, Kurse, Armstrong, Fowler, and then even CeeDee Lamb was asked about the tours at the Star, if they're a distraction, and he said sometimes. Does that give you pause at all, or not really?
Not in the very least, and I'm not trying to be cute here. When that writer was interviewing me to write that article, I really told her, I said, I'm so happy you're writing this article because it will increase our tours significantly. More people will come to the tour. And so please write the article, and I want you to really go into it in depth. And when you do, I want to point out to you that since we have expanded or elaborated the tours, since we moved from Valley Ranch to the Star, that we've gone from the 6th winningest team in the NFL to the 4th winningest team in the NFL. But I want you to know that while we had all of those tours before we moved to the Star and had people in and out there and had what you would call disruptions, you know, we were the first team to ever allow cameras, ESPN, in the draft room. And I've always been such a significant pusher for more fan accessibility, more fan visibility. Our players have helmets on, unlike some sports. And so it's great for the fans to get in and see all these nuances. When we basically during the off season, when the league does those shows, I always have the Cowboys up there front and center if you can, because that leads to interest. I put the Cowboys in every house organ. I put it in every pad and tablet. I put it in every magazine I can, because I don't know that I'll make them fans, but when they do look at it, hit the television, they usually have a little more interest in the Dallas Cowboys. That's actually foolish to think that some kind of tours would impact the players. Now, I like what Micah Parsons says. I like what Dak Prescott says. I like what Ferguson says. Now, those guys, we all recognize them and realize they're competitors. And they laugh at the idea that some kind of tour, something going on, would impact their play. As a matter of fact, I feel like I know, because from the day I got here, I've wanted more people watching practice, more people around the functioning of the Cowboys. You've heard me say that when I played, when we would practice, we'd have 1,000 or 2,000 people within 15 feet of us on the grass knolls. And that made me excel. It was like my Super Bowl, and so I wanted to give every drill, everything I got. And when I got my butt whipped, I was ashamed, as much as wanting to be a good, better player. I was ashamed doing it in front of 1,000 or 2,000 people at practice. That's ridiculous to think that it impacts the playing of a player.
When you were talking about the fan base, I have no doubt that you have added hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Cowboys fans into the fold since you bought the team. I am curious, though, in the last 25 years, last 10, however you want to quantify it, do you feel like you've probably driven away any Cowboys fans at all and made them no longer a fan of this team?
Nothing shows that. I have more people at the stadium we've ever had. I have more people watching the Cowboys than we've ever had. Frankly, we have more interest in the Cowboys than we've ever had. It's the opposite. The interest has gone up. Now, I really know the interest would really spike if we should get in the championship game and we should be in the Super Bowl. The Cowboys men are like a room full of lighter fluid. And if you had about 2 inches deep in a room full of lighter fluid, what the going deep in the playoffs or the Super Bowl would be like throwing a match in there. We really have seen nothing like, in my view, that you would have if we got up there and competed at that level. Now, again, I want to remind you that we're the 6th winningest team, maybe the 5th winningest team in the NFL. Over the last 15 years, over the last 20 years, I'm not even including Super Bowl years in there at all. But we are. What does that mean? Doesn't mean a thing to most of us, because we want to win the Super Bowl. We've had 2 or 3 shots that we might have had a shot at it. And then we would have, rather than 5 Super Bowls, we would have had 7 or 8 Super Bowls. You got to get started. I I want to stay around the rim. I want to qualify for the playoffs. I want to get in the playoffs, and I want to add to that 5 Super Bowls. That's the reality of it, and so I understand disappointment about this year. And I understand that I heard last year that, well, they won big, they had great offense, they did all that during the year, but then they let us down in the Super Bowl. Let us down in the playoffs. They're the big team that disappoints. There's no real way to have a satisfaction when you've got to stop playing and somebody else is going to go get the trophy, like the Super Bowl trophy. But I want to do it, everything I do, and I will do whatever it takes, whatever it takes. One of the things I do, though, is because of my background, I know that if I spend $1 today, I won't have it next year, the next year, the next year. And that's why you see me criticized, because of sometimes we don't spend it now on a player because we got to save it for something we want to spend in the future.
Jerry, you mentioned how the Cowboys have just grown so much, pretty much, by the attendance and everything from 1989 to today. Well, the World Series starts tonight, Yankees and Dodgers, and I know this could be like hours of an answer, but could you say there's one thing, because from 1989 to 2024, baseball has gone in the other direction. Is there something that you can point to that football did so great from 1989 to today versus what baseball has done from 1989 to today?
Let me start. I'll be quick on the answer, though. Baseball is my favorite sport of all. I love to play baseball. I had to actually call on myself almost every day to go play football. It hurt me more than it did everybody else, I thought. I'm teasing. But the point is, baseball is my sport. I love baseball. And frankly, it was the St. Louis Cardinals that made me think that when I bought the Cowboys and only had about 20% of the money that it took to buy them, I thought I could do something like Anheuser-Busch had done with the Cardinals and find me something that I could attach to the Cowboys and go forward from 1989 and pay some of the losses of the Cowboys. And I said, that's how I'm going to get to play in the game and get to try to win a Super Bowl. And that really was my plan. So I actually used baseball. Now, I'd like to tell you I've done big homework, and I haven't done big homework. My master's degree at the University of Arkansas is the role of marketing in modern-day football. That's what I wrote my thesis on. And so my point about all of this is that baseball has had a lot of they haven't been on free TV a lot nationwide, on free TV, real free TV. You'll never have a day when the NFL isn't on free TV for almost every part of it. So we want to stay very accessible, very accessible. I think that has a lot to do with it. Our game culminates in a time, the fourth quarter of the year, where it's TV friendly. You know, the biggest thing that makes the NFL as popular as it is in my mind, it's a soap opera every day, 365 days a year. So it's promoting interest in football when the teams aren't playing. Now, I'd like to take credit for that, but Dan Burke, the chairman of Cap Cities that bought ABC and just had bought ESPN, told me that almost 40 years ago. And I've tried to practice it. By the way, he said, don't always give them powder puff stuff, too. Make it controversial. So when it gets slow around here, I will stir it up.
Well, we appreciate the time very much, good sir. We'll catch up again next week.
Thanks, guys. Good talking to you.